It really is a great honor to present my next guest, our first guest tonight. I suppose the word hero sounds corny at times, but I don't think you have heroes anymore.
Johnny Carson ruled late-night television for 30 years.
He is the star of The Tonight Show. Please say hello to Johnny Carson.
He made careers with a single joke, destroyed reputations with a raised eyebrow, and became the most powerful man in entertainment. But behind that charming smile and quick wit was a man who held grudges like nobody's business. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on Carson's most closely guarded secrets, the 7 celebrities he absolutely despised. These weren't just professional disagreements or minor feuds. We're talking about lifelong hatred, backstage confrontations, and vendettas that lasted decades. Some of these names will shock you. Others involve threats of violence, organized crime connections, and betrayals so deep they changed the landscape of television forever. Because when you crossed Johnny Carson, you didn't just lose a friend, you lost access to the most important stage in America. Let's count down the 7 celebrities who made the King of Late Night's personal enemies list. Number 7, Lola Falana. Most people remember Lola Falana as the Queen of Las Vegas, a stunning performer who dominated the Strip in the 1970s with her singing, dancing, and magnetic stage presence.
Like sweet morning dew.
But what they don't know is how she ended up on Johnny Carson's permanent blacklist. The trouble started during a 1974 Tonight Show appearance when Falana decided to get political. Instead of sticking to the usual celebrity small talk, she launched into a passionate discussion about race relations and discrimination in Hollywood. This wasn't the sanitized, safe conversation Carson preferred. This was raw, honest, and uncomfortable. Carson, who prided himself on keeping The Tonight Show apolitical and family-friendly, was visibly irritated. He tried to steer the conversation back to safer territory, but Falana wouldn't back down. She continued discussing the challenges black performers faced in the industry, calling out specific examples of bigotry she'd witnessed. But what really sealed her fate was her association with Wayne Newton. Falana was performing regularly at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas, the same venue that became central to Carson's bitter feud with Newton. When Carson's war with Newton escalated, anyone connected to that world became collateral damage. Industry insiders say Carson viewed Falana's political stance and her Vegas connections as a double threat. She represented everything he was trying to avoid: controversy, complexity, and connections to people he considered enemies. After that 1974 appearance, Falana was never invited back to The Tonight Show. Her career continued to flourish in Vegas and on other variety shows, but the most important platform in entertainment was permanently closed to her. The blacklisting was particularly cruel because Falana had done nothing personally offensive to Carson. She'd simply spoken her truth and happened to work in the wrong venue. But in Carson's world, guilt by association was enough to earn a lifetime ban. Number 6, Bob Hope. This one might surprise you. Bob Hope was supposed to be Johnny Carson's comedy idol, a legend who paved the way for everyone who came after.
You know, Don Rickles thinks that he invented the insult, but I've been getting insulted since my earliest days in show business, and I have the reviews to prove it.
But behind the scenes, their relationship was a masterclass in professional resentment and barely concealed contempt. The problem wasn't Hope's talent, it was his demands. By the 1970s, Hope had become what industry insiders called high maintenance. He'd arrive at The Tonight Show with a team of writers, a list of specific requirements, and an expectation that the entire show would revolve around him. Carson, who valued spontaneity and natural conversation, found Hope's scripted approach insufferable. While other guests would engage in genuine banter, Hope would deliver pre-written jokes and plug his upcoming projects with mechanical precision. But what really drove Carson crazy was NBC's pressure to keep booking Hope. Network executives saw Hope as ratings gold and pushed Carson to have him on regularly, regardless of how Carson felt about it. This created a situation where Carson felt trapped, forced to accommodate a guest he couldn't stand because of corporate politics. The breaking point came during a particularly awkward 1978 appearance, where Hope's performance was noticeably off. His timing was sluggish, his jokes fell flat, and the entire segment felt forced and uncomfortable. Carson had to carry the entire interview while Hope seemed disengaged and unprepared. After the show, Carson reportedly told his producer, "I'm done propping up has-beens." But NBC's pressure continued, creating an ongoing source of frustration that lasted for years. Carson's resentment toward Hope represented something deeper. His frustration with an industry that valued nostalgia over innovation, corporate interests over creative integrity. Hope became a symbol of everything Carson was fighting against in his quest to keep The Tonight Show fresh and relevant. The professional relationship continued out of necessity, but the personal respect was gone. Carson saw Hope as a relic who refused to gracefully step aside, and Hope sensed Carson's disdain, but was powerless to change it. Number 5. Don Rickles. Don Rickles was known as the Merchant of Venom, a comedian who built his career on insults and put-downs. He was also one of Johnny Carson's most frequent guests and supposedly a close friend. But their relationship was far more complicated and hostile than the public ever knew. The incident that destroyed their friendship happened during a 1973 Tonight Show taping when Rickles was guest hosting for Carson. In a moment of comedic inspiration, or catastrophic judgment, Rickles decided to destroy Carson's prized cigarette box, a personal item that sat on Carson's desk and held deep, sentimental value.
I just started the show. I picked my box up off my desk that I've had for 9 years. My box is broken. They told me you broke it.
Rickles smashed the box on live television, thinking it would get a big laugh from the audience. It did. But when Carson returned and discovered what had happened, he was furious. This wasn't just a prop. It was a personal possession with emotional significance. Carson's reaction was swift and public. During the next night's show, he confronted Rickles on live television, making it clear that the destruction of his property wasn't funny. It was a violation of trust and respect.
Uh-oh.
What the hell happened to this?
But the real damage went deeper than a broken cigarette box. Carson saw Rickles' action as a fundamental disrespect for boundaries and personal property. In Carson's private world, where he guarded his personal life fiercely, this kind of intrusion was unforgivable. The confrontation revealed something crucial about Carson's personality: his extreme need for control and his intolerance for anyone who crossed clearly defined lines. Rickles had violated the unspoken rules of their relationship, and Carson never fully forgave him. While Rickles continued to appear on The Tonight Show occasionally, the easy friendship was over. Carson remained professionally cordial but personally distant. The warmth and genuine affection that had characterized their earlier interactions was replaced by a cooler, more formal dynamic. Industry insiders say the incident taught everyone in Carson's orbit a valuable lesson. Johnny's personal space and possessions were sacred, and violating that trust, even for a laugh, came with serious consequences. Number 4. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was a comedy legend, a master of physical humor, and one of the most successful entertainers of his generation.
Hold it! Hold it! Stop with the brushing.
He was also, according to Johnny Carson, truly hateful. A man whose ego and cruelty made him unbearable to work with. The problems with Lewis went far beyond creative differences. Multiple Tonight Show staff members reported that Lewis treated crew members with shocking disrespect, viewing anyone below his star status as essentially invisible. He'd snap at cameramen, ignore production assistants, and make unreasonable demands that disrupted the entire show. Carson, who prided himself on treating his staff well and maintaining a professional atmosphere, was appalled by Lewis's behavior. He watched Lewis berate crew members for minor mistakes and make impossible requests that put everyone on edge. But what really sealed Lewis's fate was his unpredictable and combative nature during interviews. While most guests understood the rhythm of The Tonight Show and worked with Carson to create entertaining television, Lewis would often hijack segments, interrupt other guests, and turn what should have been fun conversations into uncomfortable confrontations. One particularly notorious incident involved Lewis completely taking over a show where he was supposed to be just one of several guests. He monopolized the conversation, cut off other guests mid-sentence, and essentially turned The Tonight Show into the Jerry Lewis Show without permission. Carson's patience finally snapped during a backstage encounter where Lewis reportedly made disparaging comments about Carson's interviewing skills and suggested he could do a better job hosting the show. This kind of arrogance and disrespect was exactly what Carson couldn't tolerate. The ban that followed was absolute and permanent. Lewis was never invited back to The Tonight Show, and Carson made it clear to his staff that Lewis was persona non grata. When other shows tried to book Lewis as a guest to discuss his feud with Carson, Carson's influence was enough to shut down those appearances as well. Carson's hatred of Lewis represented his intolerance for ego-driven performers who put their own needs above the collaborative effort required to make good television. Lewis had proven he couldn't play well with others, and Carson wasn't willing to sacrifice his show's quality to accommodate a difficult star. Number 3. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was the chairman of the board, a cultural icon whose influence extended far beyond music into movies, politics, and popular culture. But Johnny Carson saw something else. A controlling, potentially dangerous man whose mob connections and intimidation tactics made him a threat to everyone around him. On the surface, Carson showed Sinatra the respect his status demanded. When Sinatra appeared on The Tonight Show, Carson was professional, even deferential. But privately, Carson was deeply uncomfortable with Sinatra's entourage, his demands, and the atmosphere of barely controlled menace that surrounded him. Carson once confided to a close friend, if he didn't sing, he'd be a mob enforcer, and sometimes I think he was both. This wasn't just a joke. It reflected Carson's genuine belief that Sinatra's connections to organized crime made him dangerous to cross. The problems went beyond Sinatra's alleged mob ties. His backstage behavior was notorious among Tonight Show staff. He'd arrive with a large entourage that would essentially take over the studio, making demands and treating NBC employees like servants. The atmosphere became tense and intimidating whenever Sinatra was scheduled to appear. Carson was particularly disturbed by how Sinatra's people would case the studio before his appearances, checking sightlines, exits, and security arrangements as if they were planning a military operation rather than a television interview. This level of paranoia and control made everyone nervous. But what really turned Carson against Sinatra was witnessing his treatment of other performers and staff members. Sinatra's reputation for explosive anger and vindictive behavior was well known in Hollywood, and Carson saw firsthand how people would cower in his presence, terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing. Carson valued his independence and refused to be intimidated by anyone, regardless of their status or connections. Sinatra's attempts to control situations and people ran directly counter to Carson's need for autonomy and creative freedom. The relationship remained professionally cordial but personally cold. Carson would book Sinatra when ratings demanded it, but he never forgot that he was dealing with someone who operated by different, more dangerous rules than the rest of show business. Number 2. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers wasn't just Johnny Carson's enemy. She was his greatest betrayal. For years, she was his chosen successor, his comedy protégé, and the person he trusted most to carry on the Tonight Show legacy. Then she stabbed him in the back in the most public way possible. Rivers had been Carson's permanent guest host since 1983, filling in whenever he took time off. She was brilliant, fearless, and had earned Carson's respect through years of hard work and loyalty. Carson saw her as the future of late-night television and had essentially anointed her as his heir apparent. But in 1986, Rivers made a decision that would destroy their relationship forever. Without telling Carson, she accepted an offer to host her own late-night show on Fox, The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers.
The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers. Joan kept tonight at David Lee Roth, Pee Wee Herman.
This wasn't just taking another job, it was direct competition with The Tonight Show, scheduled in the same time slot. The betrayal cut Carson to his core. Rivers hadn't just left, she'd become the enemy. She was using everything Carson had taught her to compete against him, taking his audience, his format, and his time slot. But what made it even worse was how Rivers handled the situation. Instead of calling Carson personally to explain her decision, he found out through industry reports and media coverage. The woman he'd mentored and trusted had blindsided him completely. Carson's reaction was swift and absolute. Rivers was banned from The Tonight Show permanently. Her name became forbidden in Carson's presence. When other guests would mention her, Carson would change the subject or cut to commercial. The ban extended beyond just Rivers herself. Carson made it clear that anyone who appeared on Rivers' show would not be welcome on The Tonight Show. This created a devastating choice for comedians and entertainers. Support Rivers and lose access to Carson, or abandon Rivers to maintain their Tonight Show relationship. Rivers' show failed after less than a year, but Carson's anger never faded. Even after Rivers publicly apologized and tried to reconcile, Carson refused all contact. He never spoke to her again, never acknowledged her existence, and never forgave what he saw as the ultimate act of professional treachery. The feud became one of Hollywood's most bitter and long-lasting rivalries. Rivers would spend the rest of her career trying to repair the relationship. But Carson's heart had turned to stone. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Number 1. Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton was Johnny Carson's ultimate nemesis. The one celebrity who not only earned Carson's hatred, but actually threatened him with physical violence. Their feud was so intense, so personal, and so dangerous that it changed how Carson viewed his own safety and security. The war began with jokes. Carson, always looking for easy targets, started mocking Newton's Las Vegas image and his somewhat effeminate stage persona. The jokes were cruel and relentless. Carson would imitate Newton's voice, make fun of his appearance, and suggest connections to organized crime. At first, Newton tried to ignore the attacks, but as Carson's mockery continued night after night, reaching millions of viewers, Newton's reputation and career began to suffer. The jokes weren't just entertainment, they were character assassination broadcasts to the entire country. The breaking point came when Carson's jokes began implying that Newton had ties to the mob. These weren't just insults about his singing or his style, they were serious allegations that could destroy Newton's career and potentially put him in physical danger. Newton had had enough. In a move that shocked Hollywood, he confronted Carson directly. According to multiple sources, Newton showed up at NBC and delivered a clear message: stop the jokes or face the consequences. The confrontation was reportedly intense and threatening. Newton made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate any more attacks on his character or suggestions about organized crime connections. The implication was obvious: continue the jokes and there would be serious repercussions. Carson, who had never been physically threatened by a guest or target of his humor, was shaken by the encounter. He immediately stopped making jokes about Newton, and Newton was effectively banned from The Tonight Show for the rest of Carson's tenure. But the feud had lasting consequences beyond just the immediate threat. Carson became more cautious about his targets, more aware of the real-world impact his jokes could have. He realized that his power to destroy reputations came with genuine risks. The Newton incident also revealed something crucial about Carson's character. When faced with real danger, he backed down. The man who could destroy careers with a joke wasn't willing to risk his own safety for the sake of comedy. Industry insiders say the Newton confrontation haunted Carson for years. He'd gained a powerful enemy, learned the limits of his own courage, and discovered that some people wouldn't just take his abuse lying down. The feud never truly ended. Newton and Carson maintained their mutual hatred until Carson's death, representing one of the most bitter and dangerous rivalries in entertainment history. These 7 celebrities represent more than just Johnny Carson's personal dislikes. They reveal the dark side of absolute power in entertainment. Carson could make or break careers with a single joke. But that power came with enemies, threats, and consequences he never anticipated. From political disagreements to personal betrayals, from professional jealousy to actual physical threats, these feuds show us a side of Johnny Carson that the public rarely saw. Behind the charming smile and quick wit was a man who held grudges, settled scores, and never forgot when someone crossed him. Some of these celebrities deserved Carson's hatred. Others were simply victims of his need for control and his intolerance for anyone who challenged his authority. But all of them learned the same hard lesson. When you're at war with the king of late night, you're fighting a battle you can't win. Carson's legacy as America's favorite host remains intact, but these 7 feuds remind us that even legends have their dark sides. And sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one with the biggest smile and the sharpest tongue. We are committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more film lore.